Hey, everybody, welcome to the Profit Tool Belt podcast. Got an interesting topic today that actually came up first because I've been burned by it before. What a great place to come up with topics, things that have smacked me in the face. But also because I've run across this particular situation a couple times now in the last month. And that is a situation that I have no business talking about. Let's start with that. But because we're going to talk about legal agreements today, I'm not a lawyer. I don't even play one on TV, but twice in the last, let's just say month, 6 weeks maybe, I've run across two businesses who do not have a partnership agreement between the two partners. So I'll say this in advance. You'll probably hear me say it a couple times through the episode. If you and your partner don't have a partnership agreement, I understand it could be an awkward conversation. Let me also start by saying the conversation will probably get awkward during the process of putting a partnership agreement together. But in spite of all that, it's still required to do. And so this episode, if your partner doesn't listen to this podcast, please ask them to so that they can hear from a completely impartial third party. I don't even know who you are, quote unquote, but you're going to hear my take on partnership agreements and why they're important. I've been burned in the past by not having partnership agreements. And some of you are saying, hang on a sec, Rubino. Thought you're some hotshot entrepreneur business coach guy. How could you not have a partnership agreement? That's the point. It just happened. One of my companies just kind of started and then it kept going. And we didn't realize, believe it or not, we didn't have a partnership agreement until it came time to sell. And just to make it funny and to maybe put an exclamation mark on it for you, this was the business that got really large. I had 160 people working for me. And my partner in that business was my cousin and another guy. Stack up the awkward conversations on top of each other, including conversations that extended to the dinner table and the big banquet table at Christmas, Thanksgiving, family baptisms and confirmations and communions and weddings. So you want to talk about awkward? Yeah, it got awkward. And even though that business has now been sold years ago, things still aren't the same. And I don't know that having a partnership agreement would have changed everything, but it would have made a lot of the worst conversations a checklist, if that makes sense. So I'm going to walk through why a partnership is important in a construction business, in a contracting business, whether you've got one partner, two partners, whether it's yourself and your spouse, whether it's yourself and your best friend, whether it's you and your dad or you and your cousin, like I had, or whoever it is. These are important. And I also want to say I am not a lawyer. So let's start with that. I'm a dum-dum. I don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm referring to a document that I refer to as a coach when I'm talking to my clients about why they should get a partnership agreement. So by all means, just listen to this podcast as if you and I are having a beer. So it's not a business coach. I'm not telling you what to do, but I am suggesting you got to do this. So partnership agreement is where you have something written between you and the other people or person in the company who are, the owners of the company. I'm not going to get into limited liability companies or corporations and things like that. I'm going to let you deal with that in your own country, in your own state, in your own province, however things run there. But we're just going to call it a partnership agreement. So it's an operating agreement between me and you as business partners. And it's a formal agreement that both of us have on paper. It has been signed by both of us, and it is being held somewhere in our corporate registry. So there's actual documentation of this. Just another funny thing that happened in another company that I sold, we couldn't actually find the partnership agreement when it came time to sell. That caused a ton of stress. So I'll ask you this, if you already have a partnership agreement, do you know where it is? Have you gone into the safe and looked for it? If you don't have a safe, now's a great time to get one, a fireproof safe, or keep it in the bank safe deposit box, or leave it at your lawyer's office, whatever it is. Keep it electronically and store it on a drive like Google Drive, but have signed copies there. And then also have access for somebody else who's not you to be able to access it in the event of your death. Sorry, I had to say it, but if you die and your wife can't find the partnership agreement, that it does you no good, especially if the other partner can't find it, won't find it, or won't tell you they found it. And by the way, if you don't have a partnership agreement, then what happens is it automatically defaults back to your government rules, whether it's the state rules, the federal rules, or a combination of both, provincial rules, federal rules, combination of both, et cetera, depending on what country you're in. So you really want to have a written agreement so that it doesn't default back to what your country and your region, so that's a state or province, say it should be. All right. Here's a couple of things that, and there's actually 7 reasons that I know of and that I speak to when we're talking about having a partnership agreement in a construction business. Number 1, I already mentioned, you want to avoid the default rules of the state. And the reason for that is because they're actually pretty vague and pretty high level. And they don't actually give you the protections or have you ever heard the saying, good fences make good neighbors? They don't set up the fences as well as you think they would. And they don't set up the fences the way you like. You like a split rail fence and they've got a chain link fence. You want it to look one way and the state or the province says it looks another way. So you really want to avoid the default rules. And remember, if you're coming to the point where you and your partner are discussing the contract, you are at what I would call the bottom of your relationship. So what are the situations that could cause us to talk about a partnership agreement? I'm dead. So that's a problem, because who are you going to talk to? Now you've got to be talking to my wife about what the partnership was. Maybe you're talking about the partnership agreement because my wife and I are having a divorce and she wants her half of the business. You're not really interested in that because that means she's now your business partner. And I would imagine you don't want that. And then the other reason that you might be there is because you and your partner, so me and you, are having some sort of fight that we can't get through. And it's time that one of us wants to leave. And so you really want to have the rules in place so that you get to say what those rules are in advance when everybody is thinking calmly and thinking rationally and everybody's alive and there's no real stress on the table other than figuring out the hinky points of a partnership agreement. That's number 1, avoid the state's default rules or the province's default rules. Number 2, you want to have a partnership agreement so that you can have control over who owns the company. So this is interesting. And the longer I'm in business, the more I realize the crazier or wackier the situation is, the more outlandish it seems like that would never happen. The more it sounds like, are we in a soap opera? The more I realize, yeah, this life can be like a soap opera. Those wacky things can happen. Could you imagine if you and your partner have a bit of a snit? Let's for this case say I'm your business partner. You and I have a bit of a fight, so I decide to go work for the competition while I'm still a shareholder of the company. Yes, it happens. It sounds crazy. It sounds bonkers. And the reason it sounds bonkers is because you can't imagine it happening. Well, already you and I have a difference of opinion because I think it's great to go work for the competition. Why wouldn't I work for the competition? Working for the competition will give us a leg up. It'll teach us a whole bunch of things, et cetera, et cetera. And I've got logic in my mind that does not line up with the logic in your mind. By the way, if we step outside of this podcast for a second, I agree with you. Why the heck would my partner go work for the competitor? But unless we have that on paper, we don't have it on paper. And unless it's in paper, it doesn't exist. So a contract is important. So you want to be able to restrict how any of the partners can sell or transfer the interest, so the shares or the assets of the company, to control who owns the business. If you don't have a written agreement, I can sell my interest to anybody else. I could actually sell my piece of the company to a competitor. I could sell my piece of the company to somebody who's a dum-dum, a bigger dum-dum than me. I could sell my interest at a poker game. I could put my interest in the company up at a poker game and another person could win it in a bet. I'm not kidding, folks. You want an exciting day? Come sit in Dominic's office for a day. We see all sorts of stuff. So those things are important, right? And also, you also want to make sure that if myself and my wife get a divorce, that my wife is not suddenly your business partner. And she shows up to the Monday morning meeting and says, I'd like to put some changes in place. I have some ideas. And you're sitting across the table on the other side going, what the beep and beep and beep? All of that with a smile on your face. Because you have to, because she's your new business partner. You don't want that. Get a partnership agreement in place. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, oh, it's never going to happen to us. How the heck would that ever happen? You don't understand, Dom. I'm in business with my best friend. I'm in business with my mom, my dad, my cousin, my brother, my sister. It'll never happen. Okay. What if it does happen? What if you're in business with your sister and she's doing a great job of running the business, but she falls ill? And I'm not wishing this on anybody's sister, but she falls really ill and her husband has to step in to take her place. But he's a dum-dum. You don't like the guy. You don't even look forward to Thanksgiving. You feel bad for your sister that she's married to this guy, and now he's your business partner. Have I made my point yet? So number 2 is to have control over who owns the company. Things happen. Life moves on. Every day that we are alive, we are one step closer to death. And you guys know I'm a pretty positive guy, but I just want to point out that we're all going to go. We're all going to go. So what happens when you go should be written on paper so that we don't have a surprise. And dumb brother-in-law is now sitting at the boardroom table saying, yeah, I got some ideas. I don't want to hear your ideas, buddy. I want you out of this company. And a partnership agreement will line up how that happens. Let me move to point number 3 here. I want you to have a partnership agreement because I want you to agree on important things in advance, right? So you can agree in advance on things like how you're going to deal with a fight if you have one. And you might think, well, we'll just take it to the lawyers. Well, my friend, lawyers are set up for exactly that kind of reverse ATM. Do you know what a reverse ATM is? An ATM is a bank machine. It's a reverse bank machine. All they're doing is pulling money out of you and your company. And there's probably some lawyers listening to this. I have friends that are lawyers. You guys are very good at your job, but a lawyer is a very expensive way to go. So maybe you will understand that in your partnership agreement, you agree to go to mediation first or negotiation first. That is much cheaper and it still gets the same result. So you want to have that in place. If by some chance, and I only know this because it happened to me, if by some chance you and one of your partners are in different areas, so different provinces or different states or different countries, your partnership agreement will also outline where court proceedings will be held. And so don't think it out of control if you and your partner are having a fight and your partner's in a different state. Your partner says, hey, I'm going to announce a court date that just happens to be your birthday, but it's in the state I live in, which is across the country. And so now you have to leave your family on your birthday to appear in court for one little thing in front of the judge, which is going to cost you thousands of dollars anyways, just because you and your partner are fighting and he wants to make your life hard. It'll happen. It'll happen because I've seen it happen. So, and I don't think I'm unique in any way. I'm nothing special. I'm just observing what's going on around me, and I don't want you to be in that position. So you want to agree on important issues in advance. By the way, here's an important issue. How and when are we going to take money out of the company? I remember a family construction business that I was dealing with. They were 2 brothers and a brother-in-law. You probably already know how this is going. The brother-in-law was married to the sister of the 2 brothers, right? So you got 2 brothers and a brother-in-law. The brother-in-law is married to the sister of the 2 brothers. The brother-in-law was actually somebody that I had known through business in the past. And so he called me over to the office for a meeting and he said, hey, Dom, I'd like to talk to you. I know you're a business coach and you specialize in construction companies. Can we have a chat? So I said, yeah. So I went over to his office. We hadn't even started working together yet. We went into the boardroom to have a meeting and he closed the door. And I'm not kidding. 2 minutes later, one of the brothers poked his head and said, who's this guy? What are you guys meeting about? The distrust in that office was through the roof. And no matter what the brother-in-law did, he was never going to be the brother. Ever going to be the brother, right? And so remember, we're still inside point number 3, agree on important issues in advance. The important issue on the table was how we're taking money out of the company. Well, one of the brothers, as happens all too often, had been asking for money, no questions asked. I need this money. I need it by end of the day. No questions asked. And so what went from taking out a couple of $100 had moved up to taking a couple $1,000 to taking tens of thousands of money, tens of thousands of money. Tens of thousands of dollars out of the business. And he kept insisting, no questions asked. The brother-in-law guy tried to talk to his wife about it, but she was the sister of that particular brother. The brother-in-law guy tried to talk to the other brother, but he was protecting his little brother. And so you can see now how those 3 partners were completely at odds inside what should have been a beautiful thing, a family business that was doing $10 million in construction contract, right? What a great situation. Who wouldn't want to be in that situation? But inside, there was somebody who was not abiding by the laws of the business, the partnership agreement. So you want to agree on important issues in advance, like how we're going to take money, who gets what percentage, what order you're going to take that money, how we're going to recognize that money, how the books get done. All of those things get outlined in the partnership agreement. And money, by the way, is the reason you're here. The reason you listen to my podcast is because you want to make more money. It's called Profit Tool Belt for a reason. My other show is called Cabinet Maker Profit System. I know why I'm here. I understand my role in your life. I'm here to show you how to have a more prosperous life with a business that runs a little bit better without as much stress. There's a couple different ways I could say it, but I hope that made sense. I know what my role is. I'm here to make you money. So I hope you don't mind me leaning in right now and whispering in your ear, hey, we should talk about how we deal with the money. All right, let's move to number 4. This one is weird, but they're all weird. Let's just agree on that. You want a partnership agreement in case you ever get to the situation where you have to remove a partner. Now, why would you remove a partner? If they're disruptive, if they're not performing, if they're not able to perform. And so maybe something happens to your partner. They get in an accident or they get sick, or they get hung up with crippling depression and they're really not able to perform. You still want to take care of this person with all the love in your heart, but you need a set of rules to do that so that everybody understands you lived up to the partnership agreement. You held to your word. You did everything that was asked of you when your business partner became depressed and was unable to work. And maybe you even went above and beyond what the partnership called for. But unless you've drawn that line in the sand in the partnership agreement, everybody's going to look at you as if you put one over on that poor guy while he was unable to get up from the couch for 6 months straight. I don't wish that on you, and you don't wish that on me. If you wish that on me, just don't listen to my podcast anymore, please. But we don't wish it on anybody, right? What about a disruptive partner? Maybe you've got a partner who's just not doing things in a way that lines up with the values of your business. I'll just say things that wouldn't line up with my values. If somebody was rude or impolite to staff or vendors, I mean, really out of control. If somebody was saying things to make the women on the staff especially feel like they couldn't be safe in a room alone with him or her, to say things that were racist, to say things that were insensitive, those wouldn't line up with the way I do business. And if you've listened to my show for any length of time, you'd know those would line up with me. Well, that would be a disruptive partner. We need to have a discussion that has teeth behind it, which is the partnership agreement. And I need to be able to say to you, listen, I understand that Christmas party was a lot of fun. I understand drinks were free. But what I don't understand is how you could go around hugging people for a little bit too long or making those kinds of comments in front of employees and their wives and their husbands. And that would be an awkward conversation, but we have to have that conversation. And that conversation has to have some meat behind it. And it's just adults acting like adults. And again, some of you are probably shaking your head. It's unbelievable how much drama Christmas parties can churn up, but that was the example I used there. So number 4, just to repeat that, is you want to remove a disruptive or non-performing partner. It happens all the time. Let's go to number 5. Number 5 reason to have a partnership agreement: to protect the business and the partner's investment. So again, we kind of talked about this, but legal agreements really split things finely. You know what I mean? They're down to the 32nd of an inch, down to the portion of a fraction of a millimeter. You want to have provisions that clearly lay out on paper what happens in the event of the owner's death or disability or personal bankruptcy. So now you and I are business partners. Let's use that as an example. Business is going along really, really well. Can't believe things are going so well. Business is incredible. Employees want to work for us. Vendors love dealing with us. The bank is begging us to take more money. And then Dominic, your partner, comes in and says, hey, my wife's got a gambling problem. And she has now endangered the mortgage on our house to the point that I have to file for personal bankruptcy. Guess what happens if you and I don't have a partnership agreement? The partnership agreement protects you from my family's bad doings, from the personal bankruptcy I have to file because my wife's been gambling away all the money. It's going to reach right through and take the corporation's asset, the company's assets, all of it gone. So you really don't have any control. That's a third party thing happening, but you want to be able to protect your investment, right? You also want to talk about things in there like non-compete. So there's a non-competition clause and then confidentiality clause. So let's go back to a situation where you and I are business partners, and we get to the point where I say, look, it's really time for me to drink rum-based coconut drinks under palm trees in a different part of the world. And, we've been partners for so long. Let's come up with a number. I'll sell you my piece of the business, but I just want to go off and retire. And you say, oh, Dominic, it's been great having you, blah, blah, blah. This is wonderful. And, tell me which palm tree you're under, and I'll send you, coconut drinks whenever I can. Everything's wonderful. Huggy, huggy, kissy, kissy. You still want to throw a clause in there that says, hey, Dom, just by the way, just as a reminder, I want to have this thing called a non-compete clause. So what that means is that Dominic is now restricted from going out and starting another roofing, framing, siding, concrete placement, refinishing, cabinetry, installation business. Whatever your business is, you want to restrict me from starting that same business. Because although we're friends, maybe I get bored drinking rum-based drinks, listening to Jimmy Buffett all day long. And I decide, you know what? There's plenty of room in our market. I'm going to go back and I'll just start a little roofing business like I used to be in, because I know roofing really well, but I think I can do it differently. I'm just going to do flat roofs. That's all I'm going to do. Well, you want to have a non-compete that says, actually, Dom, I can appreciate that you want to get back to doing things, but you can't get into the flat roof business. And it says so here in our partnership agreement that form the basis of the exit agreement. You see how these things build on each other? So you really need that there. And then the other thing is the confidentiality agreement. So you also want to have a confidentiality clause. It might be called an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, or a confidentiality agreement, or something called a non-disparagement agreement. So a non-disparagement is fancy talk. It's a $3 word that lawyers use that says, I can't smack talk you to everybody else in the market. I can't bad talk you. I can't go to the vendors and say, hey, that guy there, I mean, he's barely on his feet. They're stringing things together using a home equity line of credit to pay the vendors. I'd be very careful before you extended any credit to him anymore. That's disparagement. That's smack talk. You can't call it the non-smack talk agreement. That's probably something else. And when a rapper's making an album, I guess, I don't know. But we call it non-disparagement in the professional world. So you want to have all those things laid out, and that is laid out in the partnership agreement. Have I sold you on the partnership agreement yet? You should really consider this. It's a big deal. We're on point number 5 right now. Now, point number 6, to protect minority owners. To protect minority owners. So not everybody's a majority partner. Not everybody owns 50, 60, 70, 90% of the business. Somebody may own less, and that's very normal in business. But you want to have a written partnership agreement so that you can protect owners' rights. It's called subrogating minority shareholder rights. I'm not a lawyer, but ask me how I learned all these terms, and we can have a laugh over a beer one day at my expense. Anyways, the minority partner has a right to become part of a transaction, sell their interest, and you want to make sure that the minority owner has some rights in that situation. But as a minority owner, you also want to have some rights over the majority, or along with the majority owner, which is point number 7. You want to protect the majority owners, right? So the majority owner, somebody who owns 51% or above, there's things like drag along clauses that will force the minority partner to sell their shares if we're going to sell the company. You can't have one person there saying, well, he wants to sell, but I don't want to sell my portion. The big company, the big construction business that's going to come in and buy you doesn't want to be your partner. They want to take you out. So the majority owner has some rights to say that, just like the minority owner has some rights in the say as to how that sale is going to happen. So please remember, I'm not a lawyer. I'm reading a reference document that I use when people say, hey, Dom, should we have a partnership agreement? And if you had to vote right now, if you had to think, is Dom in favor of partnership agreements? That would be a yes. Or is Dom against partnership agreements? That would be a no. How do you think I would cast my vote? As a yes or a no? I'm 100% yes. Even if you have a company that you're just starting right now, spend some money on a partnership agreement. If you've got a company that's doing really well, you're making money hand over fist. Unfortunately, in this market, you're probably finding it hard to find staff, but you're making money as fast as you can, given the production crew you've got, guys in the field or guys in the shop. Great time to get a partnership agreement. Is it going to be hard? Yeah, it's going to be different. Is it going to be awkward? There might be some awkward questions, but I don't want to be in business with your wife and you don't want to be in business with my wife. That argument is all I need. That discussion is all I need to get me to do the partnership agreement. So please, if you take any advice from me at all, take this seriously. We're here to talk about profits and profitability. We're here to talk about running a construction business so you can have a life back. It is incredibly difficult dealing with this when it's too late. I don't know if you guys know this, and I don't want to talk about it too much, but one of my clients unfortunately went down in a plane crash, and his wife was left to pick up the pieces, and she walked into the Monday morning meeting and said, "Boys, I don't want to be here anymore," to the partners. Like it's never, this is almost a direct quote from her. It was never any little girl's dream to grow up to run a construction company. Now, she was speaking for herself. There's lots of women, and I work with lots of women who run construction companies. But it wasn't her dream as a little girl to run a construction business. And of course, she was absolutely distraught. These people were they were the most wonderful couple in the world. They're the greatest people for sure. And that's something that just happens by accident, right? But here she is in a position where they didn't have a partnership agreement. It took, I'm going to say it took over 2 years for that transaction to happen, for her to finally get the check and walk away. And that was with a willing buyer and a willing seller. Like, everybody in the company was obviously affected. The man who died was well loved by everybody. He had a great team. But even though everybody was at the table saying, yeah, we need to do this, it took 2 years. Guys, that's 24 months. If your child is 10 now, take them from the age of 10 till 12. If your child's 24 to 26, right? If your kids are engaged right now, they would be married and have their 1-year anniversary before that deal was done. It took 2 years between a willing buyer and a willing seller. I just don't want to see you in that position. Anyhow, I hope you got a lot of value out of that. It is a very important conversation. Again, a reminder, if you want to share this with your business partner who doesn't currently listen to the podcast, this is probably a good one to listen to, because I'm not speaking from anybody's viewpoint. I don't have any skin in the game in your company at all. I'm an outside party. I don't even know who you are as a listener, but I do care about the people who listen to the show. I feel like, oh, you have a duty of care. And it would be wrong for me to not be in the situation where I reminded you. Like, I got to be the guy that reminds you of this. So please keep it in mind. If you have questions on this, if you and your partner, remember, I'm not a lawyer, but I am a business coach. And that's a different thing. So if you have questions about operations, about profitability, about systems of process, call me. You guys know my cell phone number. Just text me, 604-837-8361. And if I can help, I will. And if I can't, we'll just have a good chat and I'll point you in some sort of direction for sure. Anyhow, thanks for listening in, folks. Have a great day. I hope you found lots of value in this, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.